Welcome to From the Driver's Seat, the Averitt podcast for all Averitt drivers to keep up with news and information across our network. Make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcasting app to make sure you're notified as soon as every episode drops. And now, hosting from the driver's seat, Director of Driver Services, David Royals.
Hey everybody, it's Dave Royals again. Welcome to the podcast. Got a great guest today. Got Jason Bolton. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing well. Good morning.
Good morning. Been here a lot of times. You and I have done a lot of podcasts over the years, and we're looking forward to getting this one started too. I think it's an interesting topic. Well. I think the topic, we're going to talk about safety features and obviously the safety features on the trucks. And you and I both remember years ago when we had the trucks that basically had no safety features on them. Right? It was just a truck. Nothing really there except maybe the old, what was it called, Vorad or something?
Well, but Vorad was the original version that we had years ago.
Yeah.
It was amazing technology for what it was, and we had it, but it really just gave the driver an alert. It didn't do anything beyond that, and It really worked. It was great technology for the time, but we have come so far. It's hard to really imagine when you go back and you looked at what we had. And I remember when I was a driver back in the early 90s. It just didn't exist. And you didn't think about the technology because it didn't exist. So how we've come forward with that has really made a difference.
I know some of the drivers get frustrated about it. The noise in the cab sometimes that, they hear the dinging and all that. But part of that, I think the how it works and works with the driver, that's key. I think it's an assist to the driver. All these systems are to assist the driver to be safe, right?
Absolutely. You can't replace an alert, safe driver. The driver is the key in all of this. What this does is supplant that a little bit to kind of help them if something gets out of their range, for example. We try to believe the driver can see all things at all times, and it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so what this does is it supports that when maybe something slips in beyond their eyesight. And that really is the key to this. The goal behind the technology has been, always will. We believe we have the safest drivers.
Right.
We want to have the safest equipment for those drivers. And it has gone a long way to reduce our accident rates. And unfortunately, it's hard to say sometimes how much this has actually prevented, because I typically don't get a driver calling me going, hey, this car cut me off and I almost hit him. That would have been a prevention, okay?
Right.
That you can't count that to, but that happens countless times. And we can only look back at our technology and go, hey, when we have a collision mitigation event, that would have been an accident had it not kicked off.
Well, one thing, you can just look at the dollars.
Yes, you can.
How many dollars we lost in high-speed rear-end collisions or side swipes or running off the road, those things that we didn't have any assist for way back in the day. And you take a look at all the dollars that we actually spent for those kinds of accidents.
True.
And all those accidents are down over the years, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at those, and those are really severe accidents, right?
They are.
High-speed rear-end collisions and side swipes, those are really bad collisions for us.
What this technology has done is to prevent the more serious crashes. We talk about high-speed rear-end collisions, lane departure type things, where the blind spotter alerts come in and will tell a driver, hey, there's a vehicle out here, there's something that you need to pay attention to, because again, it's called a blind spot alert for a reason. It's a blind spot.
Right.
And for those that have driven a commercial vehicle, they understand that, but it's kind of hard to understand that concept. So what this does, it comes in and it gives you an alert. And so it's countless accidents that has prevented alone. The roll stability technology, where it will sense if the vehicle is going into a roll, maybe going around a curve or a turn, and will attempt to, and it does a very good job at this, to keep it from rolling over. Our rollovers have really, really reduced over the years. Because
way down. You don't hear about them like we used to.
No, you don't. But the technology, it's something you got to understand. What I want drivers to understand is they need to be informed drivers that don't just hop in and drive the unit. We've done a lot of training over the years, and we've recently updated it, which is something that we want everybody to be aware of, because this technology moves forward. It's getting better. Again, it never replaces the safe driving of a driver itself.
Right.
But it's getting better. And so we've gone and we've updated our training materials. There's a new tractor safety features, or I should say it's been updated, that's going to address some of these things. The driver essentials module that we just put out earlier this year is going to cover that as well. And we're going to have some pamphlets that are going to be going out in every tractor, and they're going to be specific to the equipment they're driving. And it's not a manual. It's more or less getting on the high points of what that manual is. In fact, everyone points to, hey, make sure you read the manual. And I would encourage every driver to know where the manual is in the tractor and spend some time reading through that, because there is some specific little significant differences between how the Freightliner reacts to how the Volvo does, and ask questions. Again, be an informed driver. I had a call from a driver a couple of days ago, and he was asking me about how it was reacting when he was driving down a city street, and where there was a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk next to him, and it was kicking off automatic AEB braking or collision mitigation. I said, that's not right. What that means is that the radar somehow has gotten out of line, and I think he was just kind of feeling that, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be. Is that correct? I'm like, no, it's absolutely not. So ensure folks understand that if something's not right, don't just accept that. Let's take it to the shop and let's get it checked out, because there are specifications to make sure it's performing adequately. And things, things can impact that sensor and throw that off.
Well, I think over the years I've heard drivers say, "Hey, I was going under this bridge on a curve and it caught the bridge," or
yes,
"Hey, I was driving by and it caught the sign," or something like that, and it started the forward collision mitigation. And I think what you're saying is basically, if that happens, you're probably misaligned on the radar, because the way this thing works, it's got a radar basically in the front of the truck that sends out a signal, and it bounces back and says, "Hey, you're too close," or "You're coming up on something too fast," right?
In the old days, and we talked about VORAD a minute ago, it was really a static radar that read straight forward.
Right.
And as the vehicle went around a curve, you can imagine that radar didn't quite go. The newest iteration of that, it will follow the curve. So if that radar or the camera is not picking up, if it's picking up an object that it feels like it's in that, it's going to give you an alert. And so that's where you need to ensure that that's performing correctly. And there's certain specifications that had to be set with. Things also, it's better than it used to be, but in the wintertime, we usually get some, I would say, we get some conversations where it's going off. Well, it may be because it's dirty, it's got salt on it or something like that, which goes back to, let's sure we're keeping our equipment clean, run it through the truck wash, because that certainly does aid with that.
Right. Well, let's talk about the forward mitigation some, because that's the one I hear the most about. I guess I hear a little bit about the side spotter, but I think people understand that side spotter, what it's for, and lane departure. I think I don't hear as much about lane departure as I used to. Sometimes on the lane departure, the white line drivers were the ones
right.
And that's the way a lot of old time drivers learned to drive, was, hey, drive the white line, keep the that right side, keep that right tire close to that line, and what they call a white line driver. But I think over the years, people have adjusted a little bit to what the lane departure is. And forward mitigation, I hear more about that a little bit. People say, well, it slammed on the brakes and it did this. So let's talk a little bit about forward mitigation. And I think there is a difference, like you said, between the Volvo and the Freightliner. Let's talk about the Volvo first and the forward mitigation on the Volvo.
Well, what they do in both cases is that they're designed to kick on if the driver has not done anything to avoid it. And what I mean by that is, if you're encroaching upon another vehicle, if you're closing in on a vehicle, when you're 1 second or less and you haven't done anything, when I say done something, I mean you've hit your brake. You've made a safe lane change, if that can be done. If you've done something to where it gets some kind of input, it's designed to, at that point, kick on what they call automatic emergency braking, and that is designed to lessen the impact that you might have. I want to stop for a second and tell a story. Years ago, when we started getting this equipment, I remember meeting with Volvo in Nashville, and they had brought a tractor over there and wanted me to drive it. It was one of their Volvo branded tractors. It was one of ours. And this was really the first iteration of how this worked out. And I'm driving. I've got the representative from Volvo in the passenger seat, and I'm driving through Nashville traffic. And I remember looking over and going, is this going to do anything? Is it going to beep? Is it going to alert? He said, well, no, because you're driving appropriately. And the reason I tell that is, if you're driving the way you should, if you're reading the road and traffic conditions ahead of you, and you're keeping the appropriate following distance, this really doesn't become an issue. It only becomes an issue when that happens. For example, if a car cuts over in front of you, that's a common one we have, and goodness knows people know how they do this. So in that particular case, it is going to attempt to lock it down if it sees that vehicle, you're going to hit that vehicle. And that's across the board in both. The thing that happens a little bit different in the Freightliner than the Volvo is if it brings you to a complete stop And this can happen. I've heard from drivers had this happen. I've never experienced it myself, but if it comes to a complete stop, you have to override that system. You've got to literally step on the accelerator pedal as hard as you can to get it going again, because it locks it down to the point that it won't release for a few seconds.
That's the Freightliner.
That's a Freightliner. You can also do that by engaging a turn signal. And again, it's dependent on the situation. It wouldn't be appropriate to hit your throttle if there's a vehicle right in front of you. And so it depends on the situation. The Volvo is a little different in that it's going to still lock you down, but it will take off again just as soon as you get engagement from either the throttle or whatever like that. So it's a little bit different between the two, but both systems work similar to where they're trying to reduce a collision, and they have. They'll take a lot of momentum out of. You can imagine you got a large piece of equipment with a large amount of weight, let's say 80,000 pounds gross, and to bring that vehicle to a stop. And I remember a trip that you and I made years ago to Volvo out in South Carolina.
Oh yeah,
and we've watched how this equipment works. And it's amazing. It really is.
It really was. We did all the stuff that that you talked about earlier. The roll stability.
Right.
We did that with and without the roll stability. It felt the truck that was going to roll over, except they had
That's correct.
big wings on it to keep it from falling over. We did all that, and the forward collision mitigation,
Yes.
same thing. But I think the difference is that the drivers need to keep in mind, if you're driving a Volvo and you do stop, you can just take off normally. But if you're driving a Freightliner, you got to do one of those two things to make it work again, right?
If in the Freightliner, it will hold you there till the brakes release. Okay. 5 seconds. That means if you've come to a complete stop, it's going to hold you for 5 seconds unless you aggressively step on the throttle. And that means you've got to press it all the way through to what they call the pressure switch, and you'll take off. You can do that immediately. So it's designed to do that. And again, here's a thing that also why that's important. Sometimes a vehicle will cut over in front of you. Automatic emergency braking kicks on, and that vehicle is now taken off. It's now moved on, and it's already starting to override. So that's when you need to kick in and do something with it, or it will, again, bring you to a stop. Because it's designed to do that to keep you from having a further accident.
Right. Well, I think it's important that, the drivers understand that we know we have the safest drivers already.
I agree.
But we're just trying to assist them in this. And sometimes drivers get frustrated because they think, well, I could have hit the brakes before it started doing that. Well, you probably couldn't have. You may have thought you could, but you can't do it as quickly as the computer can in reality, right?
No, and what this is really designed for is, again, and that's what I go back to my story, an alert driver that's reading the road and traffic conditions is going to do that.
Right.
Where this really works well, let's just say it happens really quickly in front of you. You can't react that quickly.
Right.
Okay. Maybe there's a medical event. Think about this. If the driver has some kind of medical event or something like that, it keeps them from having a collision, that's a win.
Right.
What if they're slightly fatigued? As drivers get fatigued, and that's a human thing that we deal with, your reaction time naturally starts to suffer. So this comes in to assist the driver. So it never replaces it, but it's designed to assist it.
Right, and I think that's important.
Yes.
It is an assist. It really is an assist. And if they're driving correctly already and doing all the proper things, they should not hear the bells and the whistles and the stops and all that. But I think it's really important what you said. If a driver's having issues and doesn't feel it's right, get it to a shop, right?
Absolutely.
Take it to the shops and let them adjust it, make sure it's adjusted properly. But I think the technology has improved year over year as well. Don't you think?
And it's just going to get better.
Yeah.
I hear people talk about autonomous. Do I dare bring that up? We'll never see that in our lifetime. And the reason I go to that is, and think about the airline industry. Those planes do have an automatic pilot, but
right.
What do they have? They have a pilot alert sitting at the controls of it. So
right.
I think we'll see more levels of that as we go further with technology, but you always have an alert, safe driver. The thought that a driver could hop in a tractor and go to sleep in the bunk while he goes down the highway is not something we're going to see anytime soon.
Yeah, it doesn't make me feel safe. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I would want to do that if I was a driver. I don't think I'd want to go to sleep and trust that. It just doesn't sit well with me. But you look at the roads, sometimes the infrastructure is going to have a lot to do with that too. You think about it, sometimes you get on roads and you can hardly see the lines, and that's really how that works. That technology, it reads the lines on the road, right?
It does. There will be more advances with that. I think you might see some dedicated lanes, and platooning is something you hear a lot about. But again, fully autonomous is something that's way on down the line. But technology is going to improve. The technology will do better. There's a lot of things coming down the pike. We're really excited about some things we're looking forward to. And it's timely. Here last week I was on vacation. I was coming back from there, and I drove through a large metropolitan city. And I tell you, I'm so thankful that we have this technology, because the sad reality is I believe there's a large percentage of people that drive on the highway, not commercial drivers, that just don't care. And they're cutting you off, and they're doing things that is just not wise.
Right.
And I'm so thankful that we have such a safe driving group, because that's really what makes a difference. And I don't think the drivers, when they're going down the highway every day, are thinking about how many accidents that could have happened.
Right.
They're thinking about the things that are, right there in front of them. But it's important. It really is important that we talk about it, that we have safe drivers and we train them appropriately. And I just couldn't be prouder of them.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then you're right. I drive a lot, and I see people driving. They have, I think sometimes, do they have a clue that it's an 80,000-pound vehicle doing 65 miles an hour and it can't stop on a dime, And that's the driver frustration too. I'm sure they feel the same way that I do when I see that. And but part of that is this technology will help not only keep that crazy driver safe, the people that are driving wrong, but it also helps keep our drivers safe.
It does.
So it's good technology. I think all the safety technology we have in the trucks is really good. I think it's helped us a lot. I think we'll continue to see new changes coming up, right? There's other things going to happen. Let me ask you a question. I get this question a lot from drivers, and they'll say, hey, where are we at with backup camera technology or camera technology that shows down the sides of the trucks? I know we've tested some of that. Where do we stand on that kind of stuff?
We're still exploring a lot of options. The thing we want is something that can integrate OEM and come from the factory that way, because it just integrates better with the systems. We've tried a few different ones out. There's a lot of good options out there. And right now we're still in a testing mode, but I do believe we'll see that in the very near future.
Anything else you want to tell the driving force out there?
I'd just like to thank everybody for what you do every day. You don't really realize how important your role is sometimes, and I think it's very easy to get kind of focused on your own life, but what you do each and every day to prevent accidents means so much. And I know we have such a great team, and if there's anything we can ever do from our side, from the safety team or safety coordinators or corporate team, please reach out to us and we'll help you out in every way we can.
Well, Jason, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being in. We appreciate all the information. Thank you. And thank all y'all out there. And again, hey, I appreciate the safety that y'all show us every day. And, it really adds up at the end of the year when we look at our accidents keep going down. It enables us to make more money as a company, and obviously that turns into more compensation. So good things for you. Kudos to all our drivers. Appreciate how safe y'all are. Look forward to seeing y'all on the road. Y'all take care and be safe. Thank you.